Dear ladies and gentlemen, in our daily lives, we often face important decisions, crossroads that demand choices, and situations that can change the course of our entire lives. In those moments, there is an undeniable truth. God is always present, always guiding and warning us. He uses subtle signs and sometimes even clear warnings to keep us on the right path. So why do we need to pay attention to these warnings from God? Simply because they are the light, the compass in the ever-changing journey of our lives. God, the Almighty and all-knowing, always desires the best for each of us. However, because of His love for humanity, He does not impose. He grants us the freedom to choose, while at the same time giving us signs to help us understand what is right, what is wrong, and what may lead us away from His love. The purpose of today's speech is to help us recognize and fully understand 10 important warning signs that God may send into our lives. These signs are not just isolated messages, but reminders from a loving Father who seeks to protect us from potential dangers and mistakes that we might unknowingly fall into. Think of the times when we have felt uneasy, uncertain, or when circumstances around us suddenly changed. These situations are not mere coincidences. Sometimes they are God's way of warning us that something requires our attention or that there is another path He wishes for us to take. We need to understand that recognizing and responding to these warnings is not only a matter of spirituality, but also directly related to our personal growth and development. If we ignore the signs from God, we may stray from the plan He has prepared for us. At times, we might even miss valuable opportunities He has set for us to progress, to find greater happiness, or to achieve something significant in life. So now, dear audience, let us explore these 10 important warning signs from God. Let us approach these signs not with fear, but with gratitude and mindfulness, so that we may follow the path that God has planned for our lives. Have you ever found yourself constantly thinking about a particular issue in life, even when you try to push it out of your mind? There are times when we seem to be obsessed with a certain situation, whether it's an event from the past, an upcoming decision, or a relationship that needs resolution. This is not mere coincidence. Sometimes these recurring thoughts about a situation are God's way of reminding us that something requires deeper attention. God may send us messages not through direct words, but through persistent thoughts. It's His way of making us pause, reflect, and recognize that there's an issue that needs addressing. These repeated thoughts might be a sign that we need to realign our lives or make an important decision. For instance, you might constantly think about a strained relationship. Although you've tried to ignore or forget it, the thoughts keep resurfacing every time you wake up, when you're working, or even in the quietest moments. This is not just a coincidence. It could be God's way of reminding you that you need to face and resolve that situation rather than avoid it. So what should you do when you realize you're being haunted by these recurring thoughts? The first and most important step is to stop and pray. Sometimes simply confronting the issue in prayer is enough to give us a clearer perspective on the situation. Ask God to grant you the wisdom to understand what He wants you to see. Never dismiss these thoughts as mere worries. Instead, consider them as reminders from God for you to pay attention and act according to His will. Another sign that God often sends us is a feeling of unease or anxiety for no apparent reason. Have you ever experienced a situation where everything seems fine, yet deep down you feel like something is not right? A sense of anxiety with no clear cause. Sometimes this anxiety or unease is not the result of stress or pressure in life, but is God's way of warning you that you're heading in the wrong direction or neglecting something important. This feeling might arise when you're about to make a major decision, such as changing jobs, starting a new relationship, or even moving to a new city. In these moments, the unexplained anxiety could be a sign that you need to pause and carefully consider your options before moving forward. God, in His infinite wisdom and understanding, sees things that we cannot. He foresees potential dangers and mistakes we may make. Therefore, He sends us this unease as a subtle warning to remind us that something needs to be reconsidered. The necessary action when you feel anxious or uneasy is to pray. Turn to God in prayer and ask Him to grant you peace and clear guidance. Do not ignore this feeling, as it may be an important sign that requires your attention. Sometimes this anxiety is an opportunity for you to reassess your plans, or perhaps it's a sign that you need to change your course entirely. Trust that God will not let you go astray if you are willing to listen to Him. Change is inevitable in life, but sometimes sudden changes carry a deeper meaning. When your life unexpectedly shifts, whether it's losing a job, ending a relationship, or experiencing a change in living environment, this could be a sign of God's intervention. He uses these events to remind us that something needs to be adjusted, or there's a new path He wants us to pursue. These changes can often lead to confusion or even fear. We may feel as though we've lost control or are unsure of what will happen next. However, it's precisely in these moments that God is at work. He may be guiding you away from situations that could lead to failure or danger, or He may be opening doors to new opportunities that you never considered before. Remember, not all changes are negative. In fact, many changes in life are gateways to great blessings. The key is that when sudden changes occur, don't rush to react or panic. Instead, take the time to pray, asking God for clear guidance. Ask Him what is happening and how you can follow the path He has planned for you. In life, it is not uncommon for us to experience conflict or disagreements with the people we care about. This can happen with spouses, children, close friends, or colleagues. However, sometimes these conflicts arise unexpectedly and without clear reasons. In such cases, consider whether it might be a warning sign from God. Conflict can be a way to remind us that we may have become too dependent on a relationship, a career, or perhaps we are placing personal emotions above our connection with Him. God may be using these disagreements to awaken us, helping us realize that we need to realign our relationships, making sure they don't overshadow our relationship with Him. The necessary action when recognizing this sign is to pause and reflect on what is happening. Take time to pray, seeking guidance from God. Don't try to resolve the conflict in anger or frustration. Instead, listen and examine what needs to change in the relationship and whether we are straying from the path God has set for us. There are moments when we feel guilty or uneasy about a behavior that we had not paid attention to before. These could be small habits or actions in life, but suddenly they become more apparent, making us feel uncomfortable. This is not a random feeling. It is God's way of warning us about the need for change. God always wants us to live a righteous and pure life. When He stirs an awakening in our hearts, it is a sign that we have strayed from the principles He desires for us. This feeling of guilt or discomfort is a reminder that we need to return to the path of integrity and seek forgiveness from God. What we need to do when we sense this sign is not to avoid it, but to face it and pray. Ask God to help us change our ways, to correct the wrong behaviors so that we can live according to His teachings. This is an opportunity for us to renew our spirit, cleanse what is unworthy, and draw closer to Him. There are times when a Bible verse suddenly stands out and lingers in our minds, even though we have read it many times before without noticing anything special. However, at a particular moment, those words seem to be etched in our minds, causing us to ponder endlessly. This is how God uses the Scriptures to send a personal message to each individual. The Bible is a priceless teaching that God has given us to learn from and seek guidance. When a Bible verse keeps coming to mind, it may be a sign that God is trying to communicate something to us through His Word. Sometimes this verse is directly related to a specific issue we are facing in life, or it is guidance for the future. When encountering this sign, take the time to carefully read and meditate on that Bible verse. Seek guidance from God and pray to understand the message He wants to convey through His words. God always speaks to us through the Bible, but only those who listen and reflect can truly grasp the deep meaning He wishes to impart. One important sign that God often sends us is when we feel the need to continuously pray for clarity or guidance, even after we've made a decision. In those moments, our hearts may still lack peace, even after thoughtful consideration. It feels as though something is prompting us to pray more, seeking greater clarity. This is a sign from God, indicating that our decision may not be entirely correct or needs to be reconsidered. When we feel the need to pray repeatedly about a certain issue, it could be a sign that we are overlooking something important. God uses this unrest to draw us back, to remind us that He has not fully accepted or guided us in that decision. It may be that we are rushing our choice, or that we need more time to listen to God's call. The necessary action when faced with this sign is not to ignore the feeling of unease. Continue to pray and ask God for guidance. Sometimes patience in prayer will lead us to the right answer. God always has His own ways of giving us clarity, but we must be willing to listen and not push ourselves forward when we are not yet certain. In many cases, we may hesitate, unable to move forward, even though we have prepared carefully and everything seems to be going smoothly. This hesitation is not always rooted in fear or a lack of confidence. Sometimes this hesitation is a sign from God, warning us that we are on the verge of making a decision that should not be carried out. Unexplained hesitation is often God's way of protecting us from making a wrong move. When we stand before an important decision but feel inexplicably hesitant, it might be a reminder that something is not right. This could be God's way of advising us to wait or reconsider more carefully before moving forward. The key during these moments is not to force ourselves into action immediately. Take time to reflect and pray. Hesitation could be a signal from God, telling us that there is a better path waiting for us. Do not resist this feeling, but instead, let God lead until you truly feel at peace with your decision. Dreams are one of the ways God often uses to convey important messages. Throughout biblical history, many figures received God's teachings through dreams, and this still happens in the present. When we repeatedly experience the same dream or vision about a particular issue, it could be a sign that God is trying to tell us something we have not yet realized. Recurring dreams and visions may contain symbolic or clear messages, but one thing is certain: they are not coincidental. God may be urging us to pay attention to a situation, a person, or a crucial decision. These dreams should not be dismissed or ignored. Instead, we must pay close attention to their meaning. When you notice that you are repeatedly dreaming about something, pray and ask God for insight into the message He is sending. Reflect on the details of the dream and consider whether they relate to what is happening in your life. Sometimes, God uses dreams to guide or warn us about things we cannot clearly see in the real world. God does not only speak to us through internal feelings, but can also use other people to deliver His message. When you receive a direct warning from a pastor, a person of faith, or even through a sermon, it may be God trying to communicate with you. This often happens when we fail to notice internal signs, and He uses others to remind or alert us. Warnings from others can come in many forms: sincere advice, a reminder, or even a serious caution. The important thing is that when you receive these messages, you listen with humility and openness to reflect on them. Sometimes we tend to ignore or dismiss warnings from others, thinking they do not fully understand our situation. However, this could be God's way of reaching out and helping us recognize something we are unable to see ourselves. The necessary action is to listen and pray about the warning. Ask yourself whether it relates to your current situation, and seek God's wisdom to gain a clearer understanding. We should not dismiss advice from people of faith or from pastors, as it could be a direct message that God is sending to us. After we have together reflected upon and explored the warning signs from God, the most important thing is how we act upon receiving these messages. These signs are not meant to cause us worry or fear. They are sent to help us steer clear of danger, to remind us that there are better paths that God has planned for us. He always desires for us to live a life full of blessings and peace. When you recognize one of the warning signs we've discussed, the first step is to pause and reflect. Don't rush into decisions or try to move forward hastily. Allow God's space to work in your life. Prayer is the best way to connect with Him, and through prayer, we can find the guidance and certainty we need. God always wants the best for us, but He also gives us the freedom to choose our own path. The warning signs from God are not a forced intervention, but gentle reminders from a loving Father who wants to protect us from mistakes that we might not see coming. He doesn't want us to stray or wander from the good plans He has laid out for us. What we need to do after receiving these warnings is to listen and act with obedience. Faith is not just trusting in God, but also being willing to follow His will, even when it may go against our personal desires or plans. It's only when we accept His guidance and let Him lead that we truly find peace and fulfillment. Remember, God never sends a sign without a reason. Each warning carries an important message, and when we know how to listen and act, He will lead us on a path that is safe and successful. If we choose His way, we will never be abandoned or fail, because God is always with us. Finally, trust that every warning sign from God is part of His greater plan for us. It is a form of protection, a call to return to Him and to live a life full of blessings. Faith and obedience are the keys that open the doors God has already prepared. Listen, obey, and you will see that God always leads you to better things than you could have ever imagined.